No, Board of Adjustments. Ready?
Yep.
All right, Ken, I'd like to call to order the Thursday, April 21st, 2016 Board of Adjustment meeting. Roll call, please.
Hanson,
Here.
Arnold,
Here.
Stonebarger,
Here.
Shriver,
Here.
Stein,
Here.
McGuire,
Here.
Dolly,
Here.
Johnson is absent, Albertson. We have a quorum.
Thank you. First item on the agenda is the approval of the April 7th, 2016 minutes. Need a motion and a second.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Stonebarger. Second by Mr. McGuire. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Second item on the agenda is the applicant Mike Height, permit number 16640, seeking a conditional use to build a contractor shop in a C3 highway commercial district at 1534 13th Avenue Southeast. Ken?
Yeah, this is one of many that's come before you before already. This is back in that area south of the Ford Garage area. This area right here is the one that we're talking about at this time. Again, this is Mike 8 Contractor Shops and Storage Yards are listed conditional use in the C3 Highway Commercial District. We're basically all there, other than we're requesting a waiver of right to protest for infrastructure and everything else,
So we've got everything we need. There's no variance. He's in.
there's no variances requested.
compliant
Everything
lot.
else It's been public advertised and nobody spoke for or against, so.
As you back out on that, how many of those are now, it's showing barren land there, but I assume it's not.
No, we have,
3, 4 of them in there.
well, no, there's one there, there's one there, there's one there.
Kind of an area that was actually
One going
designed
there,
for
there's
this.
one there, there's one there, there's one there. We should have done this I-1 and been done with it, but.
If it's in
We're
I-1,
close
they don't
now,
need
so
the
there's no
conditional
sense.
use.
Pardon?
If it's in I-1, they don't need the
If there's
conditional
I-1,
use.
they wouldn't have to come to see you guys.
But there's a greater opportunity for commercial retail in there.
Correct.
All right, with that, I'll open the public hearing if anyone's here to speak on behalf or the board has a question.
Ken, is this no outside storage permitted, or?
Well, this is C3 and outside storage is supposed to be fenced or screened if there is some, yes. It's not permitted, it's not permitted openly.
So they can't pull in a bunch of
Well, no, I'm
trailers
not
and park?
I'm not talking about licensed trailers and trucks and stuff. I'm talking about junk and just storage of other matter.
So in the C3, it has to be fenced
Correct.
But if it's
Or for-
licensed,
or
you
for
can park
sale.
it there?
or for
and-
sale.
Pardon?
If it's licensed, you can store it there for,
For indefinitely?
it's acceptable to do that?
Yeah, if it's a daily use and stuff, yeah.
Or they're storing stuff outside, basically.
And the C3 the storage is, like I said, if it's for sale or if it's not. Now, you're talking about vehicles, that's a different kind of storage. We don't really regulate that per se, as you say. If we get a complaint on it, we can ask them to take it and move it or whatever, but I would say it's just permitted, as long as it's in use.
All right, any other questions? With that, I'll close the public hearing, ask for a motion, a second for discussion. Motion by Mr. Arnold, second by Mr. Stein. Any other discussion? Any questions? Seeing none, I'll ask for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 3, Kelly, Dominic, and Nicole Malin, permit number 16641. Again, a conditional use for contractor shop in a C3 commercial highway district at 1639 12th Avenue Southeast.
Well, this is the same thing. Kelly Malin, again, as stated, is requesting the contractor shops and storage yards listed conditional use in C3 Highway Commercial District. Again, we're requesting with a waiver of right to appropriate infrastructure. And I'll back out a little bit so you can see where this one is. This one is along 17th and 12th Avenue. Again, a little closer to the Ford Garage and stuff, and they are the exact same request, so. No variances, no other issues pending, just the contractor stops or adjourns.
Thank you. With that, I'll open the public hearing if anyone's here to speak on behalf or against it. Any questions for Ken? Lots compliant, setbacks are compliant. It's just the conditional use. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and ask for a motion in a second. Motion by Mr. Stein, second by Mr. Stonebarger. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Fourth item on the agenda. Gene and Kathy Beerscheid, permit number 16642, seeking a conditional variance for the property located at 1312 South Lake Drive.
Application was submitted requesting to construct a non-conforming 480 square foot, 12 by 40 roof deck porch onto a non-compliant single-family dwelling. Said structure to propose to be constructed 16.4 feet from the property line. I need to get into the overhead here to show you what's going on. When you guys originally sent this out, this was sent to us as being 23.1 feet, but then between Marty and Sarah, they found a bust in that and a correction, so it comes back at 16.4 feet. Now, what they've done is they've taken this thing home and raised it up 4 feet to bring it into FEMA flood compliance, and then they're remodeling it. They're actually gonna build this garage here too, under a separate permit, which just doesn't involve you guys. It originally had a 17 by 18 foot covered porch, entry deck, sunroom, whatever in the front. And they're wishing to remove that now and replace it with a 12 by 33 foot covered porch on that side. And let's go back to the map now, please, Ray. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I'll open the public hearing if anyone's here to speak on behalf or against it. Now, Ken, with this, I went out and looked at this one today. They've actually raised it 3 or 4 feet
Yep, to meet the
to
FEMA flood compliance.
so that it's not in the flood.
When they're all done,
plain.
they'll be able to do a loam and take it out of the flood
Okay,
plain,
so
yep.
it could come out. Originally, I was familiar with that before they did it. That was kind of an enclosed porch on the
Right.
front, and now
Yep.
now it will be an open porch.
Correct, but roofed.
Have a roof over it instead of an enclosed porch. To me, this is the typical variance type of odd lot. It's not
Yeah.
a square lot, not necessarily flat. That's public. That's a public easement area on that left side, correct?
Yeah, right here.
In order for them to conform with that front yard setback, they'd have to pull that house back into that neck down area, and they didn't because it was on or they used the existing foundation, I assume.
They did.
So they used the existing foundation and raised it
and then
straight
just
up.
added block to bring it up into FEMA flood compliance, So it was built prior to our setback requirements in the county anyway.
And the one thing I wanted to look at this morning is when I went out there and looked, I wanted to look both left and right to make sure that they weren't inhibiting the neighbor's view in any way. And it's kind of a funny piece of property. It is out on a point, out by itself a bit. And my concern is either neighbor, if you build out, but they're actually building less structure out toward the lot than they were before.
This neighbor actually contacted and supports the request.
Okay, and I looked at it, and it looked like there was, even though it seems like a large variance, there's still what looks to me be less encroachment now than what there was before. That's my
Yeah,
opinion.
it's going from 17 down to 12, so.
Any questions from anyone on the board on it at all? No one in the public? I'll close the public hearing, ask for a motion in a second for further discussion. Motion by Mr. Dolly, second by Mr. Stein. Any questions? Seeing none, ask for a vote. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, motion carries. Item number 5, Tom and Helen Hofteaser, permit number 16604, seeking a variance for the side yard variance for property at 3540 14th Avenue Northwest.
Yeah, again, Thomas and Helen Hofteaser. Application submitted to request and construct a non-conforming 3,980 square foot family dwelling with an attached garage on an 18,400 square foot parcel. The structure said to be constructed 7 feet from the side west property line where 9 feet is required. I guess if endorsed, staff recommends the board to clarify boulevard requirements, so. Again, Mr. Hofteaser is proposing on his property to build 7 foot off of this side where 9 is required, to fit his new house on there. There has been public notice. We have not received any comments pro or con to the issue.
Thank you, Ken. With that, I'll open the public hearing if anyone's here to speak on behalf or against the permit. On this lot, Ken, when I looked at it, is there an easement? Is there any slope? Any reason that it has to be pushed over to that side, that close to the lot line, that's from slope, easement, anything like that that's requiring him to move that over?
Well, the lot was a lower lot, and they've actually brought in quite a bit of fill just to make it for construction period, but so that wasn't really an issue that I can throw in there. I don't know, is Mr. Hofteaser here? Tom's not here, huh?
So there's no compelling reason for granting a variance on a bare lot?
That's my question to you, I guess.
I can't see any compelling reason to grant a variance.
How far from the other proper, or the, to the house side, I guess, if you,
Well-
how far off?
He's required to be 9 foot on this side, and he's gonna be 9 foot on this side. So
Right.
he's not encroaching anything into the neighbor's property there.
Well, my question, I guess, is he gonna be more than 9 feet?
No, he's 9 foot right there too, so.
So he's squeezed in there. He's 9 on one side, 7 on the other. So to be compliant, he'd have to be 9 on both sides, right?
But he knew how big the lot was when he bought it, and now he wants to put a oversized house on a lot and get a variance.
No,
Can-
Mr. Schreiber, what I was asking is that if he was 11 feet away from, the one property line, I guess I wasn't sure why he was asking for a.
Yeah, I was the same thing, wondering could he center it and be compliant? But it looks like he's 9 on one, 7 on the other. What are those other two houses there? Are they 9 feet off the property line?
I would've, Luke?
So those homes are compliant. I mean, they look like like they belong there.
What's the association's view on this request?
Ken, what are the trees on the west there? Is that part of the golf course?
That's part of the golf course, yeah, that's golf course property. It's just a screening, I suppose, hoping for future
So on that, just reiterate again, on that side, how many feet?
7.
That's where he's asking for a variance, and there'll never be anything on that side.
No.
And the
no,
other
no.
side, he's compliant.
I would say I am on a golf course committee, and we were looking, now that I see that, we were looking at that hole. There is some idea of moving that green a little bit toward those trees, which, I'm sure that the city is the adjacent landowner, because I made the comment when we were out there that those trees are going to have to grow to protect that new home that was going to be built there from that green that's sitting there. The idea was to actually move that shelter that was there and push that green further back one day. I know that's been talked about, which would put it closer to the play, closer to that lot line. Any other discussion or any other questions before I close the public hearing? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing, ask for a motion and a second for discussion.
I'll move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Stonebarger. I need a second for discussion. Second by Mr. Stein. Discussion.
Well, Pat, was that a concern? You say you're on the.
There's a little bit of concern.
Is that a little bit of
Yeah,
concern?
it's always a concern when you're building up against the golf course that it's not a liability issue. I mean, you build there, and if you get hit by a golf ball, you get hit by a golf ball. But in my opinion, the further away you are, the better you are off.
Well, and in this case, we talk about, you know, did we receive any objections from the adjoining landowners? Well, the city is the adjoining landowner here, so I guess we have to speak on behalf of the city if this is gonna be a problem. And when I read the application, I thought it was a little bit interesting with it, because the applicant said that, you know, they only had a 96-foot wide lot, which I thought that was a pretty good sized lot myself, but.
No, I'm not sure we've given a variance in the last few years for lots that were platted under the new ordinance, the 75-foot minimum, unless there's been an easement we're working around, 100-year-old trees.
Yeah, that's the
Slope,
thing. I mean,
things
the
like that.
Lot size is plenty big. I think the house is just oversized for what they've got.
All right, any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll ask
All
for,
right. Well,
Oh, go
all
ahead.
if we approved it, I mean, that opens up the ramifications of that go a long ways.
it goes back
Other
to,
lots that were platted since
on a,
that time.
on a perfectly flat lot that has no easements, no hardships whatsoever, it would tell us that our ordinance, we need to revisit our side yard setback, and we're at 9 feet, which to me is, that's about the minimum you dare do between houses. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll ask for a vote. All in favor, say aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion fails. Any old business, Ken?
No.
I see there's some behind you.
Maybe there is.
Well, I just wanted to bring up a point that you guys saw about a year ago. And some of you did, some of you did not. I think this is the right group to talk to. Do you remember when there was a lady in here that was raising Yorkies? Okay, well, she told us, I think she said she had 3 or 4 Yorkies at the house. Just for your information, the fire that we had just the other night, there was 35 Yorkies in the house. And we did, our fire department did save 11. But I think what we need to do, not as a board, but I want you to understand what we need to do as a city. When somebody comes in and asks for can we have 3 or 4 dogs at the house, and that's what we say is okay, we're gonna start looking at that through our police station and just follow up with those people and go in there and say, you know, how many dogs really are in this house? So I think 35 dogs is a little excessive in any neighborhood. So I think we need to follow up on that. And I think you guys made the right decision at the time from what we were told, that there was only gonna be 3 or 4 dogs, but that turned out to be 10 times as many.
You know, and that's part of a conditional use. I was going to mention that earlier. As a board, we grant a conditional use, and that means that they can do what they're asking to under the conditions that we agreed to. The hard part is to enforce those conditions later, and that's exactly the point you were making there. How do we
Exactly.
enforce those?
Well, I think with our new animal control people that we have on staff at the police department, when something like that comes through your board and we are actually told that they're going to have X amount of animals there, I think what we will do is we're going to set up a policy that we follow through on that, and we check and see how many animals are in this house. That's 35 is too many is what I'm saying.
Thank you.
If I could expand on that one point, that as far as this board goes, something to keep in mind if you have one of those requests, to the point of what the mayor said, is that one thing you could do is require annual check-ins or annual reports through that board back to you to show that they're complying with whatever the number you guys say is, that's how many it should be, and/or to check on health too, if that's a concern you have. It's one of those, unfortunately, it's one of those things that you, without a specific standard on it, you kind of have to live and learn, is what it amounts to.
Thank you. I need a motion to adjourn. Motion by Mr. Arnold. Second by Mr. Stonebarger. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, Luke, are you ready? I'd like to call to order the Thursday, April 21st, 2016 Plan Commission meeting. Roll call, please.
Jason Hanson. Here. Dennis Arnold.
Here.
John Stonebarger.
Here.
Pat Shriver.
Here.
Mark Stein. Here. Jason McGuire. Blake Dahl. Here. Don Albertson, liaison, good. And the mayor's here.
Thank you. First item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Could I get a motion in a second?
So move.
Motion by Mr. Stonebarger. Second by Mr. Stein. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Second item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from March 24th, 2016 and April 7th, 2016. Could I get a motion in a second? Motion by Mr. Arnold. Second by Mr. Hanson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Third item on the agenda is the annexation, zoning, and rezoning of a portion of the north half of Section 6-16-52 along the Big Sioux River and 20th Avenue Southeast. We'll take it in three parts when we vote, the three separate resolutions for the zoning, rezoning, and annexation.
Thank you, Chairman. I would suggest that you take comments together, though, as they come in, if anyone's got any comments. As you said, there are multiple legal descriptions tied here, but it's all part of one project, so they're all tied together here. Simple legal description, though not the full one, is it's a resolution to annex the south half of the northwest quarter of Section 6, less the rest of the part that's already in city limits, and the portion to attach a zoning to it, and then as well to rezone Lot 8 and Industrial Park, Government Lot 3, less portions in other lots. Better idea. Let's just look at a map. This is shown, the area is along 20th, as we said, south of the Big Sioux River, a large portion of land. Let's zoom in closer. The area we're talking about annexing, the resolution to annex would be this area right here. I've referred to it as the Hanton Farm property, although it covers a little bit, it covers more property than that, approximately 35 acres. The area proposed, and for what it's worth, that is proposed to be zoned. That's proposed to be zoned I2, as is the property that you see here in this purple hatch as well, is proposed to be zoned I2. Again, currently this area here is a donut hole within the county, surrounded entirely by the city of Watertown, zoned agricultural in the county, proposed to go to I2 for the use of the track that's planned on going around that area. I have the full legal description of the property, but I think rather than bore you, if someone really wants me to read it, I can, but trust me, it's there. Same thing with the annexation. For what it's worth, this area in your long-range land use plan did show it to remain in low-intensity use. That was primarily due to the floodplain issues that are in that area. However, the property owners, new property owners, are going through and working with the city to manage the floodplain in that area to be able to utilize the property for the loop, as we've described in past meetings, as well as a tank farm, for lack of a better term, I guess I'd call it, on the site where the farm used to be. That is all I've got.
Thank you. With that, I'll open the public hearing if anyone's here to speak on behalf or against the annexation, zoning, and rezoning. Any questions from the board? Anything whatsoever? Go ahead, John.
What did you say about the flood zone, floodways, flood zone? What?
The property owner is working with the city to mitigate where the floodplain is in that area, to do and correct my terminology here, Shane, but is it a letter of map revision or a letter of map amendment in that area to fix the floodway?
Conditional letter of map revision, that's what the process is.
Come on over here.
You get to come up and state your name for the record.
Paul Calkins with Glacial Lakes Energy. We got a conditional letter of map revision, which means we are altering that floodway, but it's a zero rise to the city. Basically, that's the process with FEMA, and then the next step would be if we build it per the plans, then we'll get the LOMR, which is the official letter of map revision, meaning that the things that we're changing in that area will affect the city zero as far as a zero rise.
Thank you. Any other questions? Anytime they build within that floodplain, it's pretty strict ordinances, and I assume they, nothing's ever approved. Ken, you see a lot of that. You don't approve anything that's, hasn't been run through the FEMA mill.
Oh, absolutely not.
I mean, it's unobtainable if they don't comply with the federal flood ordinances. All right. With that, I'll close the public hearing. Take it in three pieces. The first vote, we'll vote on Resolution 2016-14. That's the annexation of the Hanton Farm property as I-2. Need a motion and a second. Motion by Mr. Stein. Second by Mr. Stonebarger. Any other discussion on that annexation? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Next item is Resolution 2016-15. That's the zoning of the property as I-2 industrial. Any questions on that? Need a motion and a second. Motion by Mr. Arnold. Who's the second from? Second by Mr. Dolly. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Third item is the rezoning, Resolution 2016-16, and that's the rezoning of the ag land to I-2, the partial that was ag to I-2.
Correct.
Could I get a motion in a second?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Stonebarger, second by Mr. Stein. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Old business, Luke, South Side Edition.
Certainly. Next item is an item that was, the first part of it was handled at your March 21st meeting. No, March 24th meeting. A discussion on some rezoning and a vacation of right-of-way. Had some unfinished questions about the plat. Those questions have pretty well been answered, and that is the plat of Southside Edition, Southside Second Edition, on the west side of Highway 81, south of its intersection with Highway 212. Do I have the drawing? I do have the drawing. What's happened here is they're platting off two lots. You may recall this portion of 4th Street was vacated, a portion that would have come down here with the intent to plat this lot 2 and lot 1. Two questions had remained out there, and those outstanding questions were with regard to what are we going to do about access here, and I have these two put together. As of now, the intent for access, just for your information, is to come directly off of 81 at this location, which is on the northern edge of Lot 2. And that'll be a shared easement that goes across all the way back to connect with these streets back into here that are already platted. And that will, at this point, they'll pave that, have that as a shared access easement. Long-term, a development agreement component will be that at some point in the future, these roads will be expected to be paved. The trigger mechanism will be upon development of this lot, of Lot 1 or the property on the west or north side of it. So it's kind of pushing that can down the road, but the primary access, the one that's developing, is this lot that I believe was suggested to be a theater, if I'm not mistaken. One other key component to this plat that I want to tell you about ahead of time, we spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to work this issue, and in the end, what wound up happening is there is a gas main that goes up the former 4th Street. That was retained. The easement there was retained. It's a 10-foot wide easement, if I recall. At last estimate, it's expected that a building will go in that area, somewhere in that area. However, right now, in order to get final plans together, the future property owner does not have final plans and won't have final plans until they've purchased the property. They're not going to purchase the property until it's platted. So the point is, in order to get to the next step, which is renderings of plans as far as where they're going to put the building on the property, they need to transfer it. It is entirely likely that we may see a petition to vacate that particular gas main easement and move it somewhere else on the property. And from a staff standpoint, it's not a huge deal for us, and it sounds like utilities is working with them as well. It would be preferable to do that now, but without knowing where it should go, if they're gonna put it under a future building, why do it now? So that's where we're at. Those are the questions that were unanswered that are now mostly answered.
Luke, I have a question for you.
Sure.
You said the trigger mechanism on that road was if they're developed on Lot 1 or the lots to the west or north. Now, is that trigger mechanism a half a street or the whole street or what?
That will be a decision of the city at that time. This property owner's obligation will be for their half. And at the time, I would imagine at the time, that'll be when the city decides whether to put the full street in or the half. I'm not gonna stick my foot in my mouth and say that it will be or won't be. However, I believe typically in a commercial area, you have done full streets, but that's really me guessing at this point, because I didn't do a full review as to how you've done it.
I would say, as far as the city goes, I would be hesitant anymore putting in a half street. So I would prefer a full street if we're gonna do it.
So Luke, the access is on that 40-foot access utility easement. Even though Lot 1 is not going to be developed at all, it'll probably stay looking just like it is, but that will be asphalt coming in how far?
That's correct.
to the
All the
back.
way across that lot,
All the way to the back of,
all
to
the
the
way
west
to the
side
back
of Lot
of
1?
Lot
Okay.
1. Yep,
And that does match up with 12th across the road?
it does.
That was part
the
of
south edge of it. It
Right,
does.
Okay. All right, any other questions in the public? With that, I'll ask for a vote. We'll need a motion and a second on Resolution 2016-07. It's the plat of the South Side Addition.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Stonebarger, second by Mr. McGuire. Any other discussion on it? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Next item under old business, Luke, is the Woods Addition discussion.
Correct, and I'm going to just briefly introduce it, and Mr. Koisnen is here to discuss with you some things he wanted to bring up as well. What we have is this was a plat that came before you a month ago, maybe 6 weeks ago. I'm going back in my memory for a recommendation. It was a lot. They're creating a lot 2, which would be slightly less than 30,000 square feet, which was the minimum lot requirement in that zoning district. I know the intent or the reason, as described to me, was to straddle an easement that sat there. The recommendation from this body was to recommend approval subject to moving the line, I believe 17 feet to the west. The property line 17 feet to the west, which would have created a conforming lot of over 30,000 square feet. Mr. Koisnen was unable to attend the meeting that day, and he had asked if he could approach the board after consulting with staff and chairman. We noted that he could come back on the open. At this point, just for reference, since it's been acted on already, you can't just do a reconsideration because it wasn't at the previous meeting. It would have to be a new application. However, I guess the main thing, I think, if I'm in his shoes and everyone's, is to know whether or not to have an idea as to whether or not it's worth his time. So I'll stop and come on up here, and by all means. The hope was he could maybe answer some questions that weren't answered there that day.
Hi. Yeah, I guess what I had in mind was I had interest in that lot, and whoever would buy it is okay with the size of the lot. I was originally thinking of going smaller, not just so that it wouldn't encroach on my property any farther, but then just talking with Jeff Brink, he said that quite often the easement, or maybe it was the surveyor, said that usually the property line goes down the center of the easement each shared by each side, 10 feet each way. So I did feel that I would move it over and put it where they, kind of suggested, but it is under, almost 3,000 square feet under. Now, one of the things is I am tied in with my sewer to, it is I have to use a pump, and it does pump back about 300 feet or 400 feet from my building and ties into the sewer that is in the easement there. And I guess if I move it that 17 feet to meet the required lot size, I do lose access to that sewer hookup there.
Well, Gerald, you and I visited about this, and I agree with what Jeff said. The natural place to put the lot line would be on the easement. Even if that lot were increased, that 3,000 square foot to the west, it's still not usable to the lot on the east because you can't build over an easement. So in my opinion, even though it's under 30,000 square foot, it makes good sense to leave it there because you don't gain anything on that lot anyway, and that lot can never change because that easement's there. So if you say move it over 17 feet, what good's it gonna do because it's not usable in the other lot, in the east lot, so. Am I correct on that, Luke? Even if you increased it by 3,000 square foot, all you've done is then that land just lays there idle.
I thought when we talked about this, due to the setback requirements from the property line, you could actually build closer to the easement by moving it than you could otherwise. What is the setback on those lots?
It's 20 on the side, I believe. Is that right?
Ken, do you have that? What is the setback in the I-1 district on the sides? Do you know off the top of your head? 20? Okay. Isn't that what this is I-1?
Yeah.
All right.
So then with the smaller lot, you'd have to be 10 feet to the east of the easement versus right up to it, essentially.
So what you're saying is by moving the lot line to the east, he could build right on the up to the easement, which would allow him, otherwise he has to stay.
But if you only have 10 feet of the easement on your property, you still have to be 20 feet away, so you're 10 feet away from the easement. The buildable area was bigger.
Issue in there that he would have access to the sewer line.
Because 3 feet of the easement is still on his property. He would still have access to the sewer line that was, Mark, can you,
Move the lot line to the east,
if you got a 20-foot easement
be to the west.
That way, yeah, to the west.
and and your utilities aren't located directly,
To the edge of it?
right, let's say I have, my lot line's right here, and the easement stops just 3 feet, but the utilities are actually on the other person's lot line, but there's an easement there. It's an easement for city and utilities, not necessarily an easement for the adjacent property owner, true or false?
True. I mean, it's for anybody that has a license with the city, Vast, Midco, CenturyLink. Anybody can go in there.
And that's how any easement is. That easement is for specific people, not necessarily for adjacent landowners.
Right. What I would recommend is if you move the lot line to the west, just have him part of the sale of the property, him acquiring an easement, however wide he's comfortable with over his sewer line to get out to the sewer easement.
Yeah, that's how the adjacent property owner
Right.
gets access to the easement, is when he sells it, he builds his own easement.
Now, I believe you're right that if, with that 10 foot, if you did move it over, you would gain 10 foot of building space on that property.
On the small lot.
Uh-huh. And they can pave over that easement and do things like that, so it could be used as parking lot or something like that. It just couldn't have a structure on it.
And that was our mindset, is that by moving it over, we were actually making the smaller lot have more buildable space. Plus, it ended up being compliant too, did it not?
Yes, it did. And I thought we put in there that he would have access to the sewer line.
Follow that?
The recommendation at the time was to extend that easement all the way to the west edge of the property, whether it be just over his private line or just flat out all the way across it. That was where you're getting at, that he would have access to it.
Right.
That was what your recommendation was.
So the board's recommendation was by moving that lot line over, one, we made it a compliant lot. Two, we made it a better lot, the small lot, a better, more buildable, with more buildable space. That was the mindset of the board when they made their decision. But you didn't, from your side, that you didn't care for that?
I guess I feel it is encroaching too far into my lot where I have the business, that I don't want to take out that extra 17 feet out of my lot there. And I guess my feeling a little bit is that if, rather than taking that 17 feet, I think, just the last few days, I just felt, well, I can just hang on to that lot, and I can actually build right beside that easement. I can put a building, because it's my property, I can go right next to that easement with a building, and I can do it on my side of it, go right to that easement with a building, so we'd have a 22-foot setback between buildings there. And then I could make use of both lots to the best, and then just not sell the lot. I could put up a building and lease it out or whatever.
Any other questions? Anything else, Luke, on that?
No, that's it, I guess. I don't know.
Any other
Do you have
questions for you,
anything to
Mr.
add on
Quiston?
Kenny, what he had said is, as far as if he could or couldn't do that, I don't see anything that I can think of.
No, absolutely, you can do that. And you can build multiple buildings on a commercial lot, so you're gonna be better utilizing it by taking that all the way to where you can now, and like you said, possibly just leasing the other part, so. It's a single lot of record now, and there's nothing you can do. Because he hasn't legally platted it yet, because it hasn't been registered.
All right, next item, Mayor, you wanted to update us on Stony Point?
Yeah, I just wanted to give you guys a little update on our first blush at the city council level of Stony Point. You know, you guys saw it for 2 years. I thought it'd be interesting to let you know. There was, of course, the respect. You remember the report that was given in front of you, and didn't have a chance to look at that. So what Shane did at the engineering side is took the respect proposal that was done, and also the Austin engineering proposal that was done. He then hired SEH, our engineering firm out of Sioux Falls, a gentleman, Rocky, I don't know his last name, looked at both of those proposals, and he's out of the Omaha office, came up and presented it to the council. I think what really came out of it is that, you know, we're looking at the water quality and the water quantity is what was really focused in at that time. So we're going to take this in 2-3 different types of steps to get this done. We've actually directed the 3 engineering firms to work with Shane to come up with a happy medium for the water quantity, the size of the ponds and such. You're all familiar with everything that's going on there. So I just wanted to update you and let you know we would expect, or I would certainly hope that the engineering firms will have some type of an agreement by next week, so we can have a working afternoon through the council that we can get on board and start digging into the channel side of it. And no pun intended on that, really. I didn't mean that. So we can look at the at the channel and see where that goes. So that's kind of what's, just a little update on that, and I'll try to keep you guys up to date on what's happening, because I know you have it also near and dear to your heart, and you hated to give it up like that.
Thank you. Anything else in new business? No executive session. Could I get a motion to adjourn? Motion by Mr. Stein, second by Mr. McGuire. All in favor, say aye.